Another very important question. When will the war in Gaza end? After all, it is a root cause of the conflict unfolding in the Red Sea. If it were up to Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the Gaza Strip would be turned into scorched earth before Israel dials it back. And the US, its most stalwart ally, is no longer okay with this scenario. Washington has been asking Netanyahu to end the brutality. Focus instead on creating a Palestinian state. But that suggestion has fallen on deaf ears. In the latest, Netanyahu has flat out rejected the idea of a post-war Palestinian state. And this is creating tensions with the Biden administration. Here's what we know. During a news conference, a defiant Netanyahu vowed to press on with his offensive in Gaza until complete victory. His goal is the same: the destruction of Hamas and the return of the remaining Israeli hostages. He says that could take many more months. Remember, at this point, more than 25,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. 85% of the Palestinian enclave's population has been displaced. And amid criticism from all quarters and pressure mounting to engage in a meaningful conversation, meaningful talks over a sustainable end to the war, Israel under Netanyahu is not done. Not done just yet. Israel's allies, including the US, as well as many of its enemies, are all pushing for a revival of the long-dormant two-state solution. It would entail a future Palestinian state that would sit side by side with an Israeli one. The hope is that warring parties could come back to diplomacy. After all, that seems to be the only viable alternative to this endless cycle of violence. But from Netanyahu's latest comments, his intention appears quite the opposite. After the Israeli Prime Minister's brazen comment, the US National Security Council spokesperson, John Kirby, made this observation. Obviously, the US and Israel see things differently. Netanyahu is stubborn. He says Israel must have security control over all land west of the River Jordan, which would include the territory of any future Palestinian state. He has described it as a necessary condition. It's not surprising. Netanyahu has spent much of his political career opposing Palestinian statehood. Last month, he even boasted that he was proud to have prevented its establishment. What is surprising, though, is the very public rebuttal of the US diplomatic push. Netanyahu's determination. All this shows the widening rift between Israel and its Western allies. The US has tried to influence Israel's military policy, urging them to use more precision-guided weapons rather than the blanket airstrikes. They have discouraged Israel's use of ground offensive and have pushed for a two-state solution. Kirby said that the US has been exceedingly clear about what it wants Gaza to look like after the war. But now, with Israel ignoring all suggestions from the United States, the Americans are growing more and more frustrated. It also reflects poorly on the Biden administration, seeing as how he gave blanket support to Israel at first and how the US has aided its friend in the war. As far as US friends are concerned, Biden can still push Netanyahu to end the war. Meanwhile, Netanyahu's comments will please his dwindling support base as well as the far-right ministers in Israel. But around the world, those who have been horrified at the human cost of this war will remember. This is going to be Netanyahu's legacy, a legacy of blood and simply brutality. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.